Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulihil Kareem. Amma ba'd fa'a'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. As-salatu wassalamu alayka ya Rasulallah wa ala alika wa ashabika ya Habiballah. Alhamdulillahi ta'ala. In the previous lesson, I covered those things which invalidate the fast. Insha'Allah ta'ala, I will recap on what was covered. So I mentioned 3 points. 3 points we must keep in mind when discussing about those things which invalidate the fast. Number 1, anything which enters the stomach via the roots of the body, i.e. the back passage, the mouth, nose and eyes for a male, and for the female, both passages, the mouth, nose, eyes. So anything which enters these roots and reach the stomach, the fast will become invalid. This will result in the fast becoming invalid. And the second point I mentioned was vomiting. If one vomited a mouthful intentionally, remembering his fast will become invalid. Intentionally meaning he placed his finger down his throat intentionally and he caused himself to vomit. He remembered that he was fasting and he vomited a mouthful. Mouthful vomit is such a vomit which is difficult to prevent. It comes suddenly. So this will invalidate his fast. But if he vomited unintentionally, then no matter if it was a mouthful, the fast will not become invalid. But if after vomiting unintentionally, he swallowed back the vomit, and what he had swallowed was equal to the size of a chickpea or more, then the fast will become invalid. So vomiting unintentionally does not invalidate the fast, even if it was a mouthful. But if he swallowed back the vomit down his throat and what he had swallowed was equal to the size of a chickpea, then the fast will become invalid. So it was equal or more than the size of a chickpea, the fast will become invalid. And the third scenario I mentioned, the third point, if one necessitated ghusl, the major bath upon himself. So necessitating ghusl, the major bath upon oneself, invalidates the fast. And this is if he necessitated ghusl upon himself due to his own action. For example, masturbation, or he touched his wife with lust and he experienced ejaculation of semen. This will invalidate his fast. But if ghusl, the major bath, became obligatory upon him due to a lustful glance or due to imagination, then the fast will not become invalid. Okay, so due to his own action, if ghusl, the major bath, became obligatory upon him, then the fast will become invalid. So these are 3 points you need to remember. Number 1, if anything enters the body via the roots of the body, roots, eyes, nose, mouth, the back passage for the male and both passages for the female, if anything enters the stomach via the pores of the body, this will not invalidate the fast. If one takes a bath and he feels the coolness of the water inside his stomach, this will not invalidate his fast. So the water may reach his stomach via the pores of his body. Pores, the small tiny holes present on the skin. If anything reaches the stomach via the pores of the body, this will not invalidate the fast. The fast will only become invalid if anything reaches the stomach via the roots of the body. Roots I've mentioned before. Manafid. Manafid meaning roots that lead to the stomach. This is why when he does wudu or ghusl, he should take care when he is fasting. Okay, he should take care, because if whilst rinsing his mouth, water goes down his throat and he remembers his fast will become invalid. So if he was rinsing his mouth. During wudu, he accidentally swallowed the water. The water went down his throat, and at that time when this occurred, he remembered his fast. He remembered he is fasting. The fast will become invalid. Same when he sniffs water in his nose. When one does ghusl, he must cause the water to reach the beginning of the hard bone. Okay, and when he does ghusl, he will take care. He should not sniff the water so hard that it reaches the brain, hence causing the fast to become invalid. Okay, so one must take care. When one is not fasting, it is sunnah for him to gargle during wudu and ghusl when rinsing the mouth. Gargling is sunnah, but when one is fasting, he must avoid gargling. Why? Because there's a risk that the water may go down his throat, hence result in his fast becoming invalid. So these are a few important points one must take note of when doing wudu and ghusl. And vomiting, remember, if he remembered that he is fasting and he vomited intentionally, only will his fast break. Same with necessitating ghusl upon himself. If he remembered that he is fasting and he committed this mistake of necessitating ghusl upon himself, only then will the fast become invalid. So if he did anything that breaks the fast, knowing he is fasting, the fast will become invalid. However, with regards to smoke and steam, if unintentionally he inhaled smoke or he took a hot shower and he unintentionally inhaled the steam, the fast will not become invalid. But if he intentionally went near the smoke or the steam and he inhaled it, remembering he is fasting, he inhaled the smoke or the steam via his breath, and he remembered he is fasting, the fast will become invalid. Yeah. But if he was walking down the road and there was smoke and unintentionally he inhaled the smoke, the fast will not become invalid. Same if he was walking on the road and he swallowed a fly unintentionally, the fast will not become invalid. The fast will not become invalid. Same is the ruling for dust. So dust, smoke, steam, fly. Yeah. Remember, if intentionally he inhaled the smoke or the steam, his fast will become invalid. But if unintentionally he inhaled the smoke, steam, etc., the fast will not become invalid. And with regards to asthma, those who suffer from asthma, they use an inhaler, and in the inhaler there's medicine. Okay? Medicine is present in the inhaler as a liquid, and it takes form of a gas. When one uses the inhaler, medicine descends down the throat, hence it will result in the fast becoming invalid. So it takes form of a gas, and then he opens up the lungs. The sufferer, he then finds it easy. He then finds breathing easy. Breathing becomes easy for him. So due to medicine descending down the throat, and this takes form of a gas, and this ruling is similar to the ruling of smoke. If one inhales the smoke intentionally, remembering his fast will become invalid. So using the inhaler pump, this will invalidate the fast. Blood tests. Some people, they ask about blood tests. Remember the 3 points I mentioned. When one has a blood test, blood is taken out. Nothing is entering the body. Nothing is entering the roots. If anything enters the roots and reaches the stomach, the fast will become invalid. When one has a blood test, blood is being taken out. Hence, this will not invalidate the fast. But if there is no need to have a blood test, and having a blood test will cause this person to become extremely weak, it will cause him to become weak, then he should avoid having a blood test, because in this case it will be makruh for him to have a blood test, disliked, if it causes him to become weak, and there's no need to have a blood test. Injections, there's a difference of opinion between the scholars regarding injections. Some say it's allowed, some say no, it will break the fast. But those scholars who say that having injections will not break the fast. They also say if there is a need, if having an injection is really necessary, then one should have an injection. Otherwise, if it's not necessary, he should avoid having an injection, because there is a difference of opinion between the scholars regarding whether having an injection will invalidate the fast or not. So the scholars who say that it doesn't invalidate the fast, they say if one is injected in the muscle or in the veins, the effect of the injection will not reach the stomach via the roots of the body, but it may reach the stomach via the pores of the body. This is why they say the effect will reach the stomach via the pores of the body. This is why it will not invalidate the fast. Other scholars have said that having injections, this causes the one who's fasting, it's a means for him to attain energy, hence his fast will become invalid. So there is a difference of opinion. If one does choose to follow those scholars who say that the fast will become invalid, and this is perfectly fine, it's his choice. However, if one does have an injection, due to the differences of opinion between the ulama, it's best that after Ramadan he makes up the fast out of precaution. And eating unintentionally will not invalidate the fast. However, if one, after eating unintentionally, he remembered whilst the morsel of food was in his mouth, he should take it out as soon as he remembers. And if the morsel in his mouth, if what was in his mouth had a taste to it, then he should rinse his mouth. However, his fast will not become invalid. If the Sahri time hadn't finished, i.e. Fajr hadn't begun, and this person, if Fajr had begun and this person was eating thinking that it is still Sahri time, after he had finished his meal, he looked at his watch and he realized that Fajr time had entered. In this case, he will stay hungry during that day, but his fast will not count. So if he ate when the Fajr time had entered, then he realized that he was eating during Fajr time, his fast will not count of that day. He will remain hungry till Maghrib, and he will have to make up that fast after Ramadan. Same with iftari. If one opened his fast a few minutes before, unintentionally he didn't realize that iftari time hadn't begun, Maghrib time hadn't begun, and he began eating. After taking a few morsels of food, he looked at his watch and realized there's still a few minutes left for iftari. So in this case, his fast will break. His fast is not considered valid. He will remain hungry till Maghrib, and he will make up that fast after Ramadan. And if one's fast does become invalid, he will stay hungry till Maghrib time, except for the menstruating woman. The menstruating woman, if a lady, her menses begins during the day of her fast will become invalid, and she will make up that fast after Ramadan. Okay? And if she becomes pure during the day of Ramadan, she will remain hungry till Maghrib. And if she becomes pure before Fajr time and her menstruation had lasted for less than 10 days, and she had enough time to perform ghusl before Fajr entered, then she should make the intention of fasting that day. But if her menstruation period finished before 10 days and it finished before Fajr time, i.e. she didn't have enough time to perform ghusl before Fajr time entered, then in this case she will not make the intention of fasting. So if it lasted for less than 10 days, she became pure before 10 days, and when she became pure she had enough time to perform ghusl, then she will make the intention of fasting that day. If not, she will not make the intention of fasting that day. And if the menstruation bleeding lasted for 10 days, then after becoming pure, if she became pure before Fajr, she will make the intention of fasting that day. If the bleeding lasted for more than 10 days, then on the 10th day she will make the intention of fasting before Fajr, because the maximum number of days for menstruation is 10. So if the bleeding didn't stop on the 10th day, she will make the intention to fast. So these are a few important rulings regarding the fast. Another few more important rulings: the Sheikh Fani, the old person, the one who has no hope of recovering from his weak state, he will give the fidya, charity payment for each fast he misses. And the person who is suffering from a permanent illness, he has no hope of recovering, the doctor has given him time that, look, after a few months, a few weeks, you will pass away. Such a person, these types of people will give the fidya payment for each fast they miss, okay, which is the amount of sadaqah fitr, £5. They will give the amount which equals to the amount for sadaqah fitr we give, or they can feed a shar'i faqir, poor person who is upon whom zakat is not fard. They can feed him with the 2 meals, sahri and iftari, medium standard meals. This will be enough to fulfill the fidya payment for each fast they miss. And those who miss fasts, they will make up the fasts after Ramadan in the appropriate days, i.e. missed fasts cannot be made up in the month of Ramadan on Eid al-Fitr day, Eid al-Adha, and the 3 days after Eid al-Adha, i.e. the 11th of Dhul Hijjah, 12th and 13th of Dhul Hijjah. Allah Almighty shower His mercy upon all of us. Allah Almighty grant us the blessings of Ramadan. Ameen bijahin nabiyil ameen sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam.